Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CHI, your host Odysseus. So after the last episode, I felt like I needed something to cheer myself up. If you know anything about me, and if you do, I'm calling the cops, you should know that I have absolutely no use for the phrases best thing ever, or worst thing whatever, or greatest of all eternity. I find these phrases to be shallow and need the proper context to be used effectively. So please understand when I say that Walking with Dinosaurs is my favorite thing ever. Not documentary, not miniseries, or even video. Favorite thing ever. No, seriously, it was great. A mix of computer graphics and animatronics, and its presentation of a nature documentary, letting events play out naturally based on the instincts of the animals, was a stroke of genius. But we're not talking about that. We're going to be looking at the fourth entry in the Walking With series, Walking With Monsters. And that title is just confusing. I mean, you can't call it Walking With Lizards and Bugs and Fish. But Walking With Monsters sounds like a documentary about Monsters, Inc. or something. Anyway, we get a look at planet Earth after we run out of oil. That was topical about a month ago. Actually, this is Precambrian Earth. Hey, you know that scene in Fantasia? That shows the Earth in constant eruption and a fiery mix of natural disasters? Yeah, that was cool. But it wasn't two planets colliding into each other! Boom! Take that, modern blockbusters! All your talk of world-ending destruction cannot stand up to this majesty! Seriously, what other movie has the Earth being smashed by another planet? That doesn't count! But seriously, what an opening. Alright, what else can you tell us about the Precambrian age? What? Seriously? Nothing about water molecules or single-cell organisms? I mean, sure, it's not as interesting, but Walking with Dinosaurs included the boring stuff, like the Triassic period, which had cannibalism, the last remnants of a dying species, and the first dinosaurs. Which simply cannot stand up to a bunch of bacteria. Okay, bad example. Okay, what about the first oceans? You know, where life began and whatever. This is where we're introduced to something different from the rest of the Walking With series. Some text stating the time period and some random trivia. It's not much, but something. So after seeing the bastard child of a fly and a squid, we see, oh god. Ugh. Sorry people, that's just so creepy. So this transparent organism is Hyquictes, who is suspected to be the first fish. I say suspected because the only thing that can make the scientific community agree with something would be the will of God. Har har. This is also where we get to see another aspect of monsters, this kind of look into a creature's body thing. Which thankfully is a practical effect, which is kinda cool, but it's kinda silly at times. But wait, there's more! Another added feature is this fast-forward evolutionary clock thing, which kinda answers that whole how did this turn into this kinda question, but I don't think anyone is really asking that. Still, it's a cool effect, and it makes for a smooth segue into the next time period. And this is where we get to meet Brontoscorpio. Yes, Brontoscorpio. Hey, remember Apatoscorpio and that whole name fiasco? Whew, dark times. But yes, this is the Silurian period, when fish ruled the earth. Well, except for that whole eaten by giant scorpions and being in the bottom of the food chain. The age of fish sounds sillier. But this isn't a perfect documentary, and
one of the first complex brains. It's thanks to these primitive fish that we can think and solve problems today.
Thanks? I can understand this if they were describing how this led from one animal to another, but why does it need to bring up humans? I mean, this series has always been a middle finger to creationists, and it was bad enough with Walking with Cavemen, but now it seems like they're needlessly pointing it out. Also, I can't be the only one that thinks that looks like a ball sack, right? But prepare yourself for something truly awesome!
It is the arthropods and not our ancestors who have taken the first momentous steps out of the sea onto dry land.
Giant scorpions were the first to walk on land. You know, there are some things in this world that just make me happy. Movies, women, giant scorpions. My happy place. It's so awesome that it kind of distracts me from this really sad scene. Well, kind of. Really, I just see this. Also, if I didn't tell you already, the Walking With series had great practical effects. In my opinion, this is the best one in monsters.
He needs to shed his hard skin and then grow another, expanding while the new one is still soft.
That thing looks like it came out of Aliens. But now it's time to hit fast forward on evolution, as the primitive Cephalaspis grows limbs and teeth and turns into the amphibian High-Nerpetin. I would have a Pokemon style evolution, but I don't have that kind of money. So we have now moved into the Devonian period, the age of amphibians. The age of fish and the age of amphibians. You know what, I'm leaving this in the comments. You guys decide which sounds more lame. Now there's something I need to point out that the documentary fails to. You see, there are no herbivores at this point. Pretty much everything is a meat eater. Hence why meat is easier to digest for us. I mean, that's fine in the Silurian period when there's barely any vegetation, but it's starting to become very noticeable at this point. Just keep that in mind. And yet another thing this documentary fails at is this shark.
Primitive sharks are constantly on the hunt.
It's a Stephacanthus. That's all you had to say. But I know that you really don't care about that. What you want to know is, what the hell is with that dorsal fin? Ladies and gentlemen, I call this the compensating for something shark. You see, Stephacanthus males would use these steroid dorsal fins to fight each other as a means to attract mates. Truly the best and refined way of picking up chicks. Yeah, this is Hyneria, a 2-ton sushi buffet that has a hankering for mutant tadpoles. But the High-Nerpetin escapes. This is a weird remake to Jaws. And now we return to Oh for the Love of Amphibians. There are many young, luscious ladies this year, but that only means they'll be much pickier. Better flex those gills, boys. Oh no, a fight has broken out. Boys, please, there's no need to get rough. But then again, the testosterone. Oh my, the victor. But the ladies have already moved on. Better luck next year. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Oh for the Love of Amphibians. Yeah, you try making fun of the mating rituals of dead animals. But then again, we didn't get to see any actual mating. Yes! We don't care if you have to tell your kid about the birds and the bees. These documentaries need animal sex. It would just be nothing without it. But it turns out that Hyneria is not only a cock eater, but a cock blocker.
Hyneria can attack like a killer whale after a seal.
But unlike a killer whale, this sucker can pull himself onto land to catch his prey. Jeez, I thought the mutant tadpoles were the only ones that could leave the water. Speaking of tadpoles, the next evolutionary segue, so would that be evolution way or segolution? It is slightly different by using an egg. Trust me, you don't want to scramble that egg. unless you like the taste of computer graphics. But this leads to my favorite Paleozoic time period, the Carboniferous period. The age of insects. Now that's something you raise your mug to. Just to be safe, you might want to skip this part if you have a problem with bugs. But without further ado, let's take out our big ass bug hand guide. There's Mesothele, the spider the size of a cat. Watch out, Whiskers. Meganera, a dragonfly the size of an eagle. I pledge allegiance to the United States of a giant dragonfly. And Arthropods, the original human centipede, in that it can stare down a man, was 10 feet long, and could crush a car with its own weight. Try adding those bad boys to your bug collection. Now there are two reasons why I like the Carboniferous period. Partly because it's such a bizarre and alien world. Due to a combination of millions of years of plant growth and no herbivores, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is outrageous. A simple fern could grow to the size of a redwood. And old B-movie cinema had a fixation on giant bugs, so it's kinda cool to think that these creatures may have existed at some point. But what I really like about this time period is just how relevant it is to today. Oh yes, it's not called the Carboniferous just because it's a big fancy word. The amount of carbon dioxide being pumped into these trees will lead to the vast majority of the world's coal. One of the most important energy sources in human history. So while the Cretaceous may be filling our museums with yet another T-Rex skeleton, the Carboniferous has cooked our foods, powered our steam engines, and is heating and lighting our homes to this day. I'm just saying that it's something worth thinking about. But the downside to this increase in oxygen is an increase in storms and wildfires, the likes of which were so massive and violent that Katrina would look like a puddle, and Yellowstone would look like a match being thrown into a puddle. And I thought the bugs were enough to turn this into a B-movie. Apparently we had to throw in disaster flicks. Getting back to the creatures real quick, there's a little lizard that the show made a big mistake with.
Reptile Petrolacosaurus is hunting on the forest floor. But with their efficient hearts and waterproof skin, our versatile ancestors flourish in the new dry climate.
God. Petrolacosaurus was a diaspid, meaning it had two openings in its skull, which meant a different attachment for its jaw. While every major lizard in this documentary is a synaspid, which only has one hole in its skull. So of course, when it evolves into a frillback, it feels like a gigantic oversight. That's like saying that Babe Ruth is an ancestor of John Cena. There's a tiny, tiny little similarity right on the surface. But when you really think about it, it makes no sense! Anyway, this is a Dilophosaurus, an herbivore, and it's nice to see a frillback that isn't the other one. And speaking of the other one, oh look, it's that dinosaur that's not a dinosaur that keeps getting the dollar store toys. For some reason. The popularity of Dimetrodon has always confused me. On one hand, I like that a Paleozoic creature gets some attention along with the uber popular Mesozoic dweebs. But on the other hand, it's the only Paleozoic creature that receives any attention, aside from the trilobite. It's like the Paleozoic era is a music group, and Dimetrodon is their one-hit wonder. It might be something that everybody knows, but it's not a very good description of the real thing. But the documentary is aware of Dimetrodon's marketing potential, so this section will entirely focus on the aborted Spinosaurus fetus. But to be fair, a lot does go down for little Miss I'm on the cover twice. She loses her meal, lays her eggs, protects them from harsh weather and predators, protects them again from a rival female, receives heavy but non-lethal wounds, nearly starves, and finally tries to eat her own young. Look. It's very obvious that they wanted Dimetrodon to go over as well as Postosuchus from Walking with Dinosaurs. Both being ancient creatures that are in fairly close time periods, both being introduced by hunting, and are written as top predators that suffer a number of tragedies, including the non-fatal wounds. The problem here is presentation. In Walking with Dinosaurs, Postosuchus was introduced with a few minutes of mood setting. Peaceful creatures grazing in a valley. They grow skittish and fearful, and then suddenly a crocodile-like head chomping down on the defenseless prey, giving out a mighty triumphant roar. And how is Dimetrodon introduced? 2 minutes of butt kissing! She just stands there posing while Kenneth Branagh goes on about how awesome she is and how you should totally get her number. Postosuchus also represented how different the Walking With series was from other documentaries. No longer would it be about talking heads and crane shots in a museum. And whereas the other creatures, even the dinosaurs, were just running around doing whatever, Postosuchus began as the apex predator. But then she got hurt, lost her territory, and died from her injuries and starvation while surrounded by scavengers. That is not only real life, but real tragedy. It's almost Shakespearean. Dimetrodon, on the other hand, her problems start at the very beginning and never let up. Nor will you have any sympathy for her by the end. And even though she goes through hell and back, how does she even survive? I hate to say it, but killing her off would have made more logical and dramatic sense. Anyway, we move into the final desperate years of the Paleozoic era. Beforehand, all the continents have been drifting around, but at this point they've all smashed into each other, leading to more volcanic activity and vast deserts. This massive supercontinent was called Pangaea. But seriously, the late Permian period was natural selection at 200%. And then hooked up the jet engines on nitro and 5-hour energy, then a particularly delightful ass on the end of a string for encouragement. Animals not only had to be the best, they had to be Olympians. Which brings me to Gorgonopsid, the largest predator on Earth. So far. This is a creature straight from hell. 12 feet of pure killer and a specialized skull and canines that would put the saber-toothed tiger to shame. And a mix of mammal and reptile blood makes this monster a master of her environment. If this beauty has been put in a prehistoric fighting game, then there's something wrong with the world. But then again, there's also... You may question or laugh, but Dimetrodon is a real trooper. He may look like a reptile, but he lives like a prairie dog, and sports a pair of tusks like a hog. And like a prairie dog, they lived in family groups with many eyes watching out for predators. Speaking of, all of my Gorgonopsid butt kissing can't help her figure out that she can't bite something that's underground. Waste of time. Oh yeah, there's also Scutosaurus, a distant relative to turtles, because... Okay, really distant relative, like Pocahontas to casino owner. And rounding out the cast... in flamboyant fashion, no doubt, is Labyrinthodont, which is more laziness because it's Rhinosuchus. Labyrinthodont is a goddamn subclass. What's with not giving the actual names of the animals? Do some of them get higher billing than others? I suppose they want you to sympathize with Rhinosuchus, what with him being the last of his kind, but look, it's bad all around, buddy. There's a line for the watering hole a mile long, and the Dimetrodons have already taken the good neighborhood. And don't think that going into hibernation will get you out of paying the bills. So on a blistering volcanic hell world of sinister incineration, or Tuesday, the metric weight of 10% of Congress shows up in the form of a bunch of Scutosaurus who drink all the water, eat all the food, and then leave like nothing happened. There's your allegory for America, everybody. 70% of life on land, 96% of life in the water, 83% of life on Earth will go extinct. The greatest mass extinction to ever happen on our planet. Siberia will turn into the Sahara. Everything destroyed in a mix of fire and horror. Yeah, okay. This is where I have to talk about a sad truth. You know how Dinotasia had that over-the-top opening with worldwide volcanic activity? Well, while Walking with Monsters is certainly a better documentary, it really can't showcase the extinction at that level. So we just get a few scenes of a sandstorm. But that's barely nothing! And somehow that killed everything! Well, except Mr. Big Shot, of course. But wow, if you have at least one thing that doesn't measure up to Dinotasia...
Had your kids, had your wife, had your kids, had your wife, had your kids, had your wife.
So our final segment leads to Lystrosaurus, to further cement the earth-shaking success of Dimetrodon. Oh, I am not kidding. Not only did they survive the worst mass extinction ever, but they went on to populate every single continent. A feat that would not be matched until Iguanodon. And just to make that clear, this is Antarctica. The Dimetrodons were so successful that they lived past the Triassic and even into the Cretaceous. So if Dimetrodon is a prairie dog, then Lystrosaurus is an American buffalo. I mean, before the white man, of course. Oh, are we checking out other animals? Well, I doubt anything can outdo the most successful... Yes, this is Euparkeria. And with his advanced pelvis, he will obviously evolve into human beings. That's right, soon he will grow hair to look fabulous, hands in order to grab bone clubs, and will ditch the tail so his tailor won't have to put a ton of work into... Oh, who am I kidding? He's an ancestor of dinosaurs. You happy? So just to make it clear, this all came from Bug Eater over here. Yay! Anyway, the Lystrosaurs are on the move, looking for some fresh greens, which is kind of like some certain animals. Unfortunately, this leads them into the mouth of a Euchambracea.
A Therocephalian.
What is the point of showing us these characters if you're not going to give us the names? Anyway, Euchambracea is similar to a venomous snake, killing its prey with a mouthful of venom that no matter of toothpaste could clean up. And seeing how these are mammal-like reptiles, I guess we should be glad that tigers aren't part cobra. Come morning, the Lystrosaurs reach a river full of crocs. Kind of like, yeah, you get it.
Chasmatosaurs are the earliest ancestors of crocodiles and alligators.
You just couldn't get out of this without screwing up one last name. And I would say that the writers got the Lystrosaurus eaten by crocs scene from Planet Earth, but this came out in 2005. But they couldn't have gotten it from real life. That makes too much sense. Oh, and don't worry about the Lystrosaurs. This will make about a 0.000000000000001% dent into the population. Jeez, considering this happens once a year, it's like Spring Break Genocide Edition. Alright everybody, clean up the corpses. You don't have to go, but you can't stay here. Well, I guess the documentary's over. Nothing can top that.
His descendants will be known as the most notorious monsters of them all. Dinosaurs.
Well, at least Walking with Monsters is aware that the Allosaurus is not a descendant of the Gorgonopsid! Alright, I'm gonna level with you guys. This concept was already shot in the foot. It's not a bad idea, but would you imagine a lot of average Joes would turn on their television for this? It's a sad truth that the Paleozoic is just not as interesting as the Mesozoic. So this was more strictly for the fans than for anything else. But still, it does have a few good ideas that make it just different enough to not be derivative from Walking with Dinosaurs. And like I said, there were some problems here that were a matter of science than out of incompetence. But even still, there were rather dumb moments every now and then. This feels less like a love letter to such a great documentary series and more like a middlingly okay version. Basically, it's the Arkham Knight of dinosaur documentaries. But out of the 4 major Walking With series, I still have to say that Walking with Prehistoric Beasts is the worst. In that it's still good, but it's just a straight up carbon copy of Walking with Dinosaurs. In conclusion, if you're looking for a good documentary, watch Dinosaurs first. But if you're looking for something about the Paleozoic, well, you're certainly gonna get it. It's probably the best one out there.